Please welcome to the stage Dr. Jacob Shapiro.
Hey, good morning. It's great to be here with you today. I'm Jake Shapiro, professor of politics and international affairs at Princeton, currently working for ODNI as special advisor for foreign malign influence. And I want to talk to you this morning about four aspects of Russian information operations in the Ukraine. The first is that they started at least 18 months before the war and drew on a range of long-term themes, things Russia had been pushing for a long time. The second is that they weren't good, and I'll show you lots of ways in which they were problematic, and that should lead you to ask hard questions about how competent the Russians actually are at this. The third is that they engaged in extensive practice of saying that their adversaries were doing the very things they were doing and therefore trying to discredit them. And the last is that, as best we can tell, they were ineffectual, at least in Western Europe. So let's get into it. These are posts from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 18, 12, and 1 month before the war. And you'll notice that what their story they're telling is that the Ukraine has long been historically part of Russia, they're intrinsically linked, and therefore any conflict will simply be a return to the historical status quo. And I'll just draw your attention to the comment on the one on the right there, which is like platonic in the perfection of its mockery of this content. The second aspect of established conspiracy theories that the Russians drew on was the narrative that the US and the West were running bioweapons laboratories in the Ukraine, and therefore the invasion was a defense of Russian territory. The interesting thing about this is that despite going back to a line of argument that Russia has been making at least since the 1980s, when the KGB's Operation Infection tried to pin the AIDS epidemic on the CIA and Army medical researchers, they didn't backstop it well. The document on the right there was allegedly taken from one of the sites that Russia occupied. And it listed, allegedly, the dangerous pathogens in the lab. Within hours of it going up, though, people who spoke the appropriate language simply read it and noted that it was nothing other than common laboratory organisms, so nothing there. The propaganda campaign was interesting as well for the theory of mind that it displays. So these are posts from a number of official Russian accounts in the days before the invasion, all of which were basically saying, look, this whole invasion scare, it's a US false flag operation, it's not actually going to happen, don't worry about it. And the thing about these is they were self-refuting as soon as Russian forces crossed the line of departure. And so you have to step back and ask yourself, what is the theory of mind that the people promoting these campaigns must have had in order to push this content? Right? They have to believe their audience is of such an Orwellian cast of mind that they will believe the past as you tell them it was today, not as it actually was. Because otherwise, having the MFA and the embassy in Greece promote this is going to destroy their ability to credibly convey messages in the future. The third thing to notice is that the false flag operations that Russia produced, they were not good. So not only did the US and allies warn that Russia would do these things at least a month out, but when they started to show up, they were immediately debunked by the open source research community. So the first major false flag operation that Russia ran was what they claimed to be a failed assault by Ukrainian commandos on a chlorine tank in Russian-occupied parts of the Ukraine. And the thing about that video is as soon as it went up, open source researchers applied the advanced forensic technology of looking at the metadata to note that it had been produced 10 days before the alleged event. And then they scrolled a little further in the metadata and noted that the audio track came from a 2010 YouTube video of a Finnish live fire exercise. So they didn't even go in and edit the metadata. The one on the bottom is a claimed car bombing in the Donbass in which a couple of civilians were killed. It was allegedly a casus belli. So if you look at the holes in the side of that vehicle, they're nice and round, right? That's what happens if you fire a rifle into a car, not what happens if irregularly shaped pieces of shrapnel hit the car at high speed following an explosion. And the bodies in the car, they zoom in after this shot in the video on the bodies. Their skulls show nice horizontal cuts in them consistent with autopsies. So they didn't put a ton of effort into this. So these bad false flags are going up. The Russians are accusing the US and NATO of doing them. So that video on the left is from what was claimed to be basically a corpse where the US and NATO were claiming there were fake videos, and the video shows the corpse moving. And it was because it's from a climate change protest in Vienna on February 4th, which open source researchers pointed out, again, hours after it went up. So the Russians are putting up this low quality content, and it's not working. This is a plot, shows Russia's net favorability rating over time from Morning Consult, which does daily tracking polls around the world. And you might notice there's a small change in the trend around February 18th of this year. Now, what's striking about this is if you thought Russia was the best adversary at information operations, maybe they're not. Thank you.